Hey, this is Darren at GitLab. And at GitLab, we're all about taking a fresh look at work. We don't just want to port the co-located norms of communication over to an all-remote setting. We see this as a fresh start, the ability to look at new tools, do things differently. And that's why I was intrigued by CoScreen. And so I've invited Till to come on today, talk a bit about agile teams, collaboration amongst teams that don't physically sit in the same place. I think we're on the precipice of something here. And companies are looking to figure out how do we weave collaboration into remote teams, all remote teams, hybrid remote teams, so on and so forth. So with that, I'll introduce Till and give us a brief overview of CoScreen and the problem you're solving.
Thanks, Darren. So as you said, I'm the founder of CoScreen, and we provide super frictionless, agile collaboration for interactive teams. So that means we believe that tools like Zoom, which has been amazingly popular recently, and they have nailed video conferencing quality and screen sharing and so on quite well for formal meetings and for meetings where you have one-to-many presentations. We believe the issue hasn't been solved for hyper agile teams that collaborate multiple times with the same participants, that share windows with each other at the same time, or want to share at the same time, that interact with each other's windows. And with existing solutions, you have to go through the same laborious process to set up your conferencing session. So you always click 10 times until you have shared a window. You call folks in a very formal way. So, and while that makes sense in many scenarios, in anyone's work life, we feel for small, agile teams, that doesn't cut it in many ways. Where, let's say if you're a small team in a large corporation or a small startup, you talk 5 times a day with the same folks, for example, to debug a problem or to jointly build a new feature or to review UX designs. It needs to be much more engaging. And CoScreen is quite unique, as we believe, and I mean that in the sense of that it turns your extended screen into your team desktop. So we start with the assumption that most developers, most agile office workers, or of course remote workers, have multiple screens if they're at least in their home office or so. And because that is based on recent trends that we've seen in our own work lives, we said, couldn't we turn the extended screen into your team desktop in a sense of any window that you move to your extended screen is appearing on the extended screens of your peers. So as soon as you move any window from your main desktop, for example, your MacBook, to extended screen, it shows up on the extended screens of Darren or whoever my peer is. And at the same time, Darren can immediately interact with these windows. So type, move it around, resize, and so on and so forth. And now you can do the same thing. So you can drop a window onto your extended screen and it shows up on my screen, and our 2 windows that show up side by side. You can interact with all of these windows simultaneously. In a way, we take the boundaries between computers away. So we feel that is quite unique. So we offer multi-user screen sharing, simultaneous screen sharing, multi-user remote collaboration. And we are just launching our public beta today, so we are looking for feedback. You can use us on macOS so far, and of course other operating systems are planned, so that one day you can have Linux Windows and Mac Windows next to each other. You can copy and paste between them. You can drag and drop stuff between them in a super frictionless way, but that is more of a vision, to be frank.
Wow, the multi-instance, multi-operating system is pretty amazing. So when I'm hearing this, I go into this with the asynchronous mindset. So at GitLab, we embrace asynchronous communication. We have people across 60 countries, a ton of time zones. So we look for tools that enable us to actually do fewer meetings and to accomplish more while interacting one-on-one or synchronously as little as possible. Just because with the organization we have and at the scale we have, async almost always works better. But interestingly with this, even GitLab will admit that if you go back and forth a few times, there are instances where synchronous just becomes more efficient. So if you're trying to work async and it's becoming inefficient to do so, then our efficiency value would say, all right, do the synchronous meeting, get on the same page, do what you need to do, and then revert back to async as fast as you can. The interesting thing about this is it seems like it gives people that need those synchronous meetings a way to do so more efficiently than sort of screen capturing their screen and then sharing it over and then hoping that there's context there. You allow people to actually physically interact with the windows at the same time. Then the secondary thing here is we often hear in remote teams that some people feel a bit isolated or a bit out of touch with the projects that other teams are working on. So if you dedicate a secondary screen to always seeing what someone else is doing or thinking or moving around, if you want to engage with that, if it's not distracting to you at a certain time, there's actually some kind of, I don't know, it kind of touches the personal side of it with you feel connected to the team because you can physically see where their mouse is going or see what they're typing in real time. I don't know if you've really thought about the cultural aspect of it or the team building and the non-isolation aspect of it, but I'm interested to hear more if that played into it at all.
Yeah, no, thank you. Totally. And I think that's even where it started. So we started with the painful experiences of other solutions at the time where we felt translated to the physical world. It almost felt like if you use these solutions and it takes 10 clicks to share a window and to take control and to do something or so, it can translate to the physical world. It's almost like whenever you talk to your peers and although you're sitting in the same office, you would have to go through 10 doors and just to ask them something. Like there's very high friction. So we try to replicate the situation that you're sitting in the same office, maybe even side by side, and you can just turn around, of course, check if you're available right now and ask you a question. That is exactly the experience we try to replicate it with CoScreen, where in an ad hoc, informal way, you can get stuff done. Or for example, also that you're sitting side by side and maybe over a piece of paper and you just, draw a few things and sketch things and help each other out and move the piece of paper left and right between folks to do something or so. There's no tool that does that. From what we've seen is even the best tools offer multi-user remote collaboration, but only one user can share. Like it's always a monologue. Like there's always one user that is in charge, and there's always a formal handover process to get other folks engaged with you. And I think that's also part of GitLab's principles to be open first, like make documents editable right from the beginning. And along the same lines, we feel that folks shouldn't ask for permissions to interact with Windows if they were intentionally shared, and that's exactly our idea. So as soon as you move something to the extended screen and it shows up, you can do something immediately because we assume you're in the same room. You decided to be in the same project, so that kind of and you will also know that your colleagues wouldn't mess around with your windows without your consent. So we start with this positive, more optimistic approach where we say open first, and you can do anything. Because teams trust each other, at least if they're good teams.
It feels like it's transparency for screen sharing. So is there any limit to how many users could be on the secondary screen, or are there any recommendations on how many engagements you want to see at a given time before like chaos would ensue?
Yeah, so technically there is no limit. We've even though of course we're constantly trying to improve image quality and performance and so on. There's no limit because we're managing all the video traffic through a central server. So even if you're behind firewalls and if you have many users, it should scale. That being said, it gets very messy if you have more than 3 or 4 users sharing windows at the same time. So you can have more users joining, but as you can imagine, at least smaller screens can't accommodate more than 3 or 4 windows. And so I think in most cases, it's 1 or 2 or 3 users sharing it at the same time. But you can even have 5 or 6 or maybe 10 folks in the same room, and they just share quickly one after another, or always 2 at a time, and you can move from UX to developer to support, or from PM to design to UX researcher to developer. So you can have very frictionless handoffs between these folks, and that is quite unique. So, but I get back to your question. I think you would rarely have more than 2 or 3 folks sharing at the very same time.
So with the handoff feature, like let's say you had an entire organization, so 100 people on there, they could almost rotate through or hand the baton off if each one wanted to present. Is that right?
Yep, exactly. And there's, again, no approval process, no request for whatever. So this isn't, you wouldn't use that for 1 to 100 presentations or so. But you can use that, I think just like Slack channels or so in at least the smaller Slack channels, that's exactly our idea. And I think it plays well, by the way, with synchronous communication. We're working on the Slack app where you can easily jump from a Slack channel into CoScreen, and you have the same members in the CoScreen channel as you have them in the Slack channel, and it's just all there.
So that's huge. I was actually speaking with someone that was building a tool a few days ago, And I was asking about the Slack integration because what I've seen is so many remote teams leverage Slack to communicate. It's their primary mode of communication. That actually convincing them to use an additional tool that isn't tightly linked with that is almost seen as a burden. So the hill to climb is very high. But if you're able to be in Slack and immediately think, okay, I want to screen share, and a simple slash command would get you in and out, that's frictionless. So it makes it a lot easier for a team to want to adopt something like that when they don't have to just sort of stack it on top. It's just yet another funnel for communications to come to them.
Yeah, no, totally.
So is that active now, or is that en route?
That is almost done. We're just internally testing. So, but just to give you an outlook, so what you can do then, you install the app in your workspace, in Slack workspace, and then you just say /CoScreen, and then you click on the button which is join this Slack channel. And this time, which put you over, we launch CoScreen and put you in that room that is uniquely connected to that specific Slack channel. And whoever does that appears there. And maybe there's a back channel where we might be able to update the Slack channel with whoever has joined the room or is live right now. Yeah, so it's very close. So of course, reach out if anyone is interested. I think you'll put a link in your video details. So if anyone wants that early access, happy to share that as well.
That's excellent. I was talking with you earlier. Would you mind screen sharing and just showing us the site, showing us some screen share? So I know you don't have the people there in the room, you can't demo it, but I just want to give people a view of what it would look like.
Yeah, give me 1 sec. The good thing is I can always blame screen sharing issues on Zoom. So
fair enough.
And of course, I have to clean up my screen because with CoScreen you wouldn't have to do that.
Was this product born out of frustrations of trying to share screens? What was the genesis?
I think a couple of things came together. So it's for sure frustration with screen sharing tools where we felt like it's just not natural enough. The experience that these provide us with just don't give us the natural feeling that you have when you're in the same room. So and of course Zoom asked me for permission because I'm on Catalina and I don't have the permissions ready. So let's hope that this works without restarting. Otherwise I might have to rejoin the session in a moment. So in brief, the story is that we've worked, my fellow co-founders and I, we've worked in enterprise software for quite some time. And it's interesting, it actually doesn't work. You know what, let me rejoin the session. I'll be back in a moment.
Well, actually, hold on. Maybe I'll just share mine. And
yeah, that's that.
We'll give that a whirl.
If you could just go to our website, I can drive you through the quick demo. In the meantime, so we worked in the enterprise software industry, and we work with folks in India, China, Germany, and the US, of course, West Coast, East Coast, and these kinds of things. And sooner or later, once a certain organization goes across a certain size or is even remote first, just like GitLab, then you hit the boundaries of remote collaboration. I think what you've done is, you've set amazing guidelines that help these teams scale. But as we discussed earlier, it just doesn't feel as natural as if you're in the same room. Sometimes that is good because folks leave you alone, but in other cases, it just doesn't create the same visceral experience in working together. And so that was the missing piece that we felt we would like to solve. And so that's what we went for CoScreen. Yeah, so if you go to, so this is a list of features. So these are release notes. If you're interested, if anyone wants to check out exactly what we're offering. So we're talking about the things that we do right now. If you want to check out the video, go to our website, CoScreen.co. That has the same video. So go to this open menu tab and go to, yeah, exactly. So you can see on top in the video, the key flow where you can see that as soon as you move a window to your extended screen, they appear on the extended screens of your peers. In this case, Alice just joins this CoScreen channel. As soon as she moves the window over, it appears on Bob's extended screen, and now Bob will do the same thing. So this is the key concept of everything we do. So you can see now both windows appear side by side. You can type into each other's windows. In this case, Alice types into Bob's window. You can audio chat at the same time, so you can talk to each other. And we also think that this also works in hybrid settings where you might even be, everyone or parts of the team is in the same room, where you can just drag and drop a window and it appears on the public screen in your meeting room. So we are thinking of going beyond just pure remote only as well. So this is an actual screencast of how the application works. In this case, imagine now you have 3 users, Alice, Bob, and Chris, and they just joined the same channel. In this case, Chris is scrolling through Alice's window and changes the code line. And that's exactly the idea. So in this case, it might be someone Sublime writing code. It might be UX designer who has created an app mockup, and they just get stuff done together in a super frictionless way, as if they would be sitting on the same computer in the same room, no matter where they are.
So one thing that struck me as I was watching that demo is the availability of technology and infrastructure to handle something like that. So imagine 20 years ago, the world's fastest mobile connection, it might not actually handle that many inputs, just from a video standpoint, a bandwidth standpoint. So do you feel like that we're at a place now where the actual infrastructure is enabling tools like this, and where do you see this going? I often talk about remote is now in a place where it can proliferate because technology and infrastructure isn't holding us back. We have access to the bandwidth, we have access to the tools and technology. So now it's actually more an issue of the culture side, the people side. The tools and tech have finally reached a point where it's ubiquitous.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. So on the one hand, bandwidth, networking, infrastructure, and so on is finally able to scale into, just like we do now, have high quality video communication and of course screen sharing. The interesting thing is the interaction to share a window and to remotely collaborate hasn't changed in at least 23 years. I'm saying 23 years because we've looked at NetMeeting in 1996, which is when I started with working with in a work context with computers and Windows, of course. In this case, you had to enter an IP address to get connected, and you could share your screen at the time and even whiteboard. And when you had to share a window, you went to the window picker dialog that is very similar to what you see in WebEx or in Zoom today. And we just feel that isn't the end of the story. Like that isn't the way things should be in all kinds of solutions. Like we think that works for, as I said, more formal meetings. It's not the right way of agile collaboration. So we felt there needs to be a different remote collaboration experience where you can share things in a much more frictionless, seamless way.
So we've stood up a few all remote pages, essentially guides for companies that want to implement remote in their various organizations. And we recently put one up on transitioning. So for companies that are currently co-located and they want to introduce remote into their organization. Recently, Twitter said that they want their next office to be remote. Stripe has said that its future engineering hub will be remote. So they have physical footprints, but they want to introduce remote. Now, obviously, we think that all remote is the most efficient way to do that because it ensures that no one is a second-class citizen if they don't come to a physical headquarters. But the reality is, our world as it stands today, there are more companies that already have a physical presence that want to introduce remote. And then maybe 50 years down the road, that tide will shift. We're in the early innings of all remote. So how do you see this playing out for hybrid remote teams? Like, I want more remote opportunities, but I also don't want remote workers to be in a situation where they're perpetually seen as a second-class citizen or disengaged from those at the office. It paints a bad picture for remote in general, even though it's not indicative for remote as a whole.
Yeah, I think what would help, and of course we are coming right into this gap, is that folks would use the same tooling if they're on-site compared to if they were remote. So, and I think Slack has shown that. So folks use Slack even though they're in the same space, and they might be even sitting right next to each other, and they still send text each other in Slack and send stuff across and check statuses on whatever workflow that they have integrated using Slack bots. And we feel that isn't existing for collaboration just yet. I mean, for synchronous collaboration. So, and that's why we believe that things like CoScreen that work well, even if you're in the same space and you don't want to walk to the next office maybe next door, or even to someone that's just 10 meters away. If you could just use the same tool in that context, and it would be beneficial to use it in that context, even though you're on site, because you can get stuff done in a very easy way with multiple users at the same time. And you could use the same thing if you're a world apart, like if you're in different continents. I think that would reduce the friction to go remote, because you can use the same tooling that you're anyway using on site in any remote setting. And if you're remote, you have the same exact capabilities that you have if you're on site.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that. We encourage companies that want to transition to think about all of the tools that they would need and processes that they would need if everyone went remote tomorrow. So if everyone, instead of showing up at the office, decided to work from home, where would the gaps be? What voids would you need filled? And to your point, for people that are working in the office, they need to use the same processes and tools as people that are remote. Otherwise, there's an unlevel playing field right away. And so, as you said with Slack, hopefully more and more tools will be built that can work in both environments to sort of ease the transition and give people that are just starting companies a leg up if they want to start their company as all remote or remote first.
Yeah.
So as I'm watching this demo, a question comes to mind. Can you record these sessions? At GitLab, we're all about documentation. So we try to record as many of our meetings so that people can join them and watch them asynchronously.
You can't just yet. So technically our process is possible. We are building on an open source stack, so that would be easy to add this feature, easy in the sense of, possible in a few weeks. But we're waiting for feedback from our customer base. So right now, you can screen share, remote collaborate, control, and audio chat. We are considering file sharing, whiteboarding, as well as recording, and we'll implement them based on feedback from our community. But of course, I mean, we've heard this before. We had folks who asked for auto-transcribing meetings. We asked for folks integrate with even chat on CoScreen. So lots of things we could do, and now it's more on our users to tell us what they think we should do next.
So I'm going to put the links that we discussed today down in the YouTube description. But if users want to download this, give it a shot, and then give you feedback, how might they do that?
Just go to CoScreen.co. It's free. It's public beta since just early morning today, so anyone can just download that. That being said, it's Mac only for now. Of course, we are planning to support other operating systems, as I said earlier. But you can use it right now. No even registration in the sense of no logins. You can just use it and enter any CoScreen channel code to get connected. And just try it out.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining me. Any closing thoughts before we go?
No, thank you. I think, again, remote is a big deal. Andreas Klinger from AngelList said remote is the next Silicon Valley. And I think he's right. And I am in Silicon Valley. So, exciting times.